If you want to speak English fluently, there are two things that I want you to stop doing. I'm Teacher Mike, and today we're talking about two things you might be doing that make speaking English fluently a lot more difficult than it should be. And first things first, speaking fluently basically just means that you can communicate easily without stopping or thinking too much. It doesn't mean that you have perfect grammar, it doesn't mean that you have perfect pronunciation, and it definitely doesn't mean that you know every word in the English language. It just means that you can communicate easily. And in my opinion, being able to communicate easily is a lot more important than having perfect grammar or knowing lots of big words. No one has ever said, "I really like talking to John because he has perfect grammar." But most people do like talking to someone who can have a good conversation, even if their grammar isn't always perfect. Now, here are the two things that you might be doing. The first thing that you might be doing is translating during conversation. When you're trying to learn new vocabulary quickly, translating can be very useful. For example, you're reading a book, you see a word you've never seen before, and even after reading the whole sentence, you still don't understand what this word means. In that situation, it's fine to use a dictionary or other tool to translate the word into your first language so that you can understand it quickly and continue reading. The problem is that lots of people try to translate words and phrases that they already know. And 90% of the time, there's no reason to do that. If you hear an English word that you know, and in your head you translate it into your first language, that really doesn't do anything useful. If you really know a word, your brain is usually going to understand it. Translating it just adds an extra step that really doesn't need to be there. Plus, sometimes you know a word or phrase in English, but it's not a word or phrase that translates perfectly between English and your first language. In these situations, you might know how to use an English word really well, but because you try to translate it and you have difficulty translating it, you make yourself think that you don't understand it. So translating things that you hear during conversation wastes both time and mental energy and can make you think that you don't understand things that, in reality, you do understand. Okay, so what should you do about this? Just stop doing it. Like I said earlier, if you really know a word or phrase, your brain is usually going to understand it. And I know that if you are someone who is used to translating everything, this might feel a bit difficult. But it is 100% possible. When someone says something to you, pay attention to what you are doing in your head. If you notice that you are starting to translate, or you feel yourself starting to think about your first language, just tell yourself to stop, relax, and trust your brain. Because again, if someone is using language that you have already learned, most of the time you're going to understand it. So, if you notice that you are translating, just tell yourself to stop. And again, I know that if you are someone who has always translated everything, doing this might be difficult. But I also know that everyone can do this if they practice. And one really good way to practice this is by listening at home, or anywhere where you are by yourself. Because when you are by yourself, if you notice that you are starting to translate, you can actually say out loud, "Stop. Stop translating." The reason that this is important is that when you tell yourself to stop, not just in your mind, but you actually say the words out loud, This uses not only your brain, but also your mouth and your ears. This means that you are using both your sense of touch and your sense of hearing. And when we use more of our senses while learning, this makes it easier for us to remember new information and build new habits. The second thing you might be doing is worrying too much about your grammar. And I'm not saying that grammar isn't important. If you want to say things that other people can understand easily, grammar is important. And if you want to speak English well, grammar is very important. However, you shouldn't be thinking about grammar while you are speaking. Thinking about grammar while speaking usually just wastes time and mental energy the same way that translating does. So this is another situation where you just need to trust yourself. Because if you study grammar regularly and you practice speaking regularly, 90% of the things that you say in a conversation are going to make sense. Sure, they might not be 100% correct, there might be some small mistakes, but the other person is probably going to understand you. And if they don't understand you, they'll probably tell you that they don't understand you. And that is when you can stop for a moment and think about a different way to say it. So, study grammar at home, at school, or wherever it is that you like to study. But don't worry about your grammar while you are having a conversation with someone. Because again, if you've been studying grammar and you've been practicing speaking, most of the things that you say are going to make sense even if they do have a few small mistakes. So, to summarize this whole video, if you want to speak English fluently, you basically just need to trust yourself and stop thinking so much. Also, if you'd like to learn more about how to improve your grammar, make sure to watch this video right here.